Our partners, knowing this, should actually say, our focus is we move Africa from where they are to the next level. I don't know whether it is their agenda to do that, but the fact that we are talking as partners, a partner tries to help the other partner.
Dear Ambassador, thank you so much for accepting to talk to us in these very, very busy times in the run-up to the summit, but many other events, the G20 and so on. For the moment, we sense there's actually quite very little enthusiasm about the summit that's coming up. But the expectations seem to be also quite low, I would say on either side, both on the European and the African side, of what the summit might come up with. Do we have the wrong perceptions, or is that also what you sense?
The perception is correct. The perception is correct that the enthusiasm is not there. And it's because over and over we have raised issues which don't get to be dealt with. Assumptions are made and you are given instructions. For example, the change in terms of funding, yes, it's right that we move from EDF to the new instruments, Ndiki and the Global Gateway. Sometimes you need to be told exactly what it means. I say this because a lot of Ndiki and EDF projects have been rebranded as Global Gateway. And everybody is wondering when Global Gateway started and when it started. And we understand perfectly very well that in some countries it's Global Gateway, which is purely commercial. You borrow, and then there is one other problem, is that the private sector that gets to decide which private sector. It is the European private sector that will deliver this project. We also need to train our local private sector, which we would say, let them partner so that you develop capacity also in Africa, so that we don't become dependent for many, many years to come.
Partnership, at least in the rhetoric, has, over the years, I've been at ECTPM also for quite some time, moved, or the terminology that is being used is we move from a donor-recipient relationship to a much more equal partnership. I do know that tends to sound a bit hollow sometimes, certainly if we look at what you just described also in terms of the differences at the way Africa is treated compared to some of the other partners of Europe. Mm-hmm. Is what you...
Of course, there are several areas. I would say we have done very well working with the European partners. But generally, sometimes when we attend meetings, sometimes it's lopsided towards the EU, for example, not giving equal chance to air. Of course, we have our own weaknesses. For example, some of us are not able to speak and say this is wrong, and that is cultural. But it shouldn't happen when, like, we are preparing, you prepare for a wedding, and I come with an agenda which you follow. It's not equal when it is like that. A wedding is supposed to be that we sit down, we put the issues, and then we sort the issues together. When you get into the details, there are quite a number of problems that adjustments need to be made to move forward together.
You already hinted at a bit of the preparation for the summit and that it was a bit lopsided. But how has the African side prepared for the summit? Who was involved? Who took the lead? And are there particular African priorities? I think you mentioned that already. But what are some of the African priorities that actually didn't make it to the agenda because the agenda was in part set by the other party?
We have a structural problem which we are So I have to be very open with this. EU funds a lot of AU's budget. That's a problem because, as they say, EU pays the piper, calls the tune. Because that happens, we are also here accredited to the EU. Sometimes we are told the issue is being sorted out by your colleagues in Addis. And then Addis, sometimes they are told your colleagues in Brussels are dealing with this. So in the end, when you, at the end meeting is when you discover actually nothing has been discussed. So the issues that were raised as outcome documents, like at the ministerial level, we actually played a big role in terms of trying to get a common understanding of what should come out as an outcome document. It wasn't respected, so the original document remained, and in the room there is nothing you do, you clap at the outcome, which is frustrating. And another frustration is that we are not all very united in Africa. And this is one dilemma, that if you understand that and you want to see change, you need to be cognizant of that. You know, the language divided us, like the Francophone, the Anglophone, Lusophone, that divides us. And whoever deals with that takes advantage of that. It is not to take advantage, it's actually to see change. That is how you become a wonderful partner.
But I did hear, for example, in the FOCAC with the Chinese, that division between Lusophone, Francophone, Anglophone is much less, and it is easier to come to a common position. But if I hear you well, it was also a bit played between Addis and Brussels. You have the role of ambassadors here, and there's ambassadors in Addis, but then of course you also have the AU Commission, which doesn't have the same mandate, obviously, as the European Commission in some of these negotiations. But so the role of the Brussels ambassadors, do you think something should change in terms of having a louder voice, or actually also from the member countries' capitals?
It should be made clear that EU Commission is dealing with the AU Commission, commission to commission. Then we would now say our ambassadors in Addis, you deal with these people in terms of preparation. Then we find out that our representation, our accreditation to the EU also means that we deal with the EU closely on issues. So this is something that needs to be made very clear, so that it is not used to play games between us and those who are in Addis, and we come with a common agenda. But it's very difficult to come up with a common agenda. So partly we are to blame because we are not completely united on this. And our partners, knowing this, should actually say our focus is we move Africa from where they are to the next level. I don't know whether it is their agenda to do that, but the fact that we are talking as partners, a partner tries to help the other partner get to the level, the desired level that they want to be at. Because Africa is a huge market going forward. If we struggle through this and get to the other level, fine. But sometimes we also think that the older Europeans who knew the past were more accommodating to Africa on several. That's how the issues like aid came about. This younger generation have nothing about the history of Africa and Europe. So they can quickly say we would appear there as a PR exercise and finish and move. Because if you look at the EU Parliament, it's more to the right. And would put several impediments between the relation between Africa and Europe. So there are dynamics which we need to understand, and how to deal with those dynamics going forward. I think the Global Gateway had good intentions that we can actually come as customers and borrow. That is why the issue of finance is very critical. And borrow, and those who can borrow and pay and grow their economies well and good. The fact that aid was stopped is also good because it removes us from aspect of dependency. And even the later generation of Europe would not look at it as benevolence. So we are headed in the right direction, but right decisions must be made to make it a better place for everybody.
I wish you a lot of good luck and strength to make your points very clear and listening ears on the other side so that you have a constructive dialogue.